Clements here with the Better Events podcast. And in this week's episode, my guest co-host Lee and I sit down with Vinnu to talk all about data-driven solutions for your event. And I will come clean with you folks. When I started this interview, I was definitely a little hesitant. I know data is important, but I definitely am one of those people that's not using it to the full extent. And I walked away with this conversation with some actionable steps that Mary and I know for sure are going to be applying to our conference that we host, the Better Events Conference, every year. But I really think there are just some really good tips about how you can think about data. You can utilize AI in an ethical way and just use data to help inform your event planning process. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements, and this week I'm joined by guest co-host Lee Gimpel, and we want to save as much time as we can for this conversation. So, Lee, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce this week's guest.
Yeah, I am really excited that we have Vinnu Deshetty here. She is the Event ROI Coach, and she leverages event data and complex technology to transform attendee journeys. With nearly 30 years in the meetings industry and experience as a former event tech founder, she blends planner insight with a love of numbers. Vinnu now serves as product manager for event technology at the American Chemical Society, is an ASAE Technology Council member, and an instructor with the PCMA Event Leadership Institute. Recognized as one of Event Tech's most influential people in event tech and a BizBash event tech innovator, she makes data and tech feel human, fun, and practical. Hi, Vinnu. Anything you want to add to that bio there?
No, you just made me sound like a big old nerd, but I'll embrace it.
We love all of those accolades, Vinnu, and I am thrilled to have you here. A little bit more for our audience of why we asked you here. You are a friend of Lee's. This has been a fun thing I'm doing with our guest co-hosts of asking them of what interesting and amazing people should be on the podcast. And you were first person that popped to mind to him. And I feel like the topic this week about talking about data-driven events, I know I personally get overwhelmed when it comes to all the things I could be doing with the data, and both as a planner, but also I host a conference around this podcast, and I know we're just sitting on a bunch of data that we do nothing with. So I am thrilled to learn from you today of kind of both as a planner and an organizer. And you mentioned that you're known for making data and tech feel human and fun. But like I said, I tune out, and maybe other people do when they hear the word data. So what's your pitch to a listener who's a little skeptical about why the data matters in events?
Don't boil the ocean. That's, there's so much out there. We collect so much. It's so easy to get overwhelmed, but it doesn't have to be that way. And once you start figuring out what's simple, what's right for you, then you'll start loving it, right? It's like dating your data, right? Like you get to know your data. You're like, I don't know about this. And you slowly get to learn it. And you're like, oh, this is kind of sexy. I think I could go with this, and it evolves. But no, definitely. I get that feeling. I felt the same way too when I first got started. But when I saw what data could do for me, got excited and was like, oh, what else can it do?
I love the idea of like a first data date here. I think that's what you're telling people. So let me step back though, and talk about like sort of the foundation here. So when we talk about data, is it anything? Are we talking about clean data, good data, any data? Like what is it? Why does it matter?
For first point, a lot of people, when they look at their strategy and they build out a strategy, I have a goal. Right. I have this goal. I want to I'm going to X number my attendees, or I want to decrease my no-show rate, whatever that goal is. You got to make sure you're collecting the data so you can see if you're hitting that goal. Right. And I think that's kind of it can be dirty data. We can work with that as long as you've got it. We can work with that, improve it, and figure out how do you get to that goal using the data.
Okay, so now you're warming me up a little bit here, Vinu, because I feel like we don't have that much data, but we did as a conference have attendee goals. I'm definitely a budget girl, so that is mainly where I, both with like revenue and costs, I feel like those are the data that I constantly think about. How, when we talk about data and maybe the intersection with AI, and don't tune out listeners because I think it's very helpful here, but where do you see AI helping event pros, and like, is there any place that you think it's overhyped versus where it's actually really helpful?
Well, I think from the very basic, to stay on the positive end of AI, from the very basic of using AI as like that second brain, we hear that concept thrown out there a lot. But really, to be a thought partner in this, even if you don't have a lot of experience with AI, you don't have a lot of experience with data, use it as, here's my goal. Talk with this AI partner and say, here's my goal. What data should I be collecting? How should I collect it? Use that as a brainstorming tool, so to help you collect that better data, help you clean some of that data, but not be afraid of it. And then to get, as you get more comfortable with it, as you get more sophisticated with your data, there are definitely elevated prompts, ways to use integrated AI tools in your tech to do more complicated things. But I honestly think that where we are as event profs, and like most people are in that kind of basic realm of like, let's use it as a thought partner. I know there's a lot of times I sit in a room and I'm like, okay, I'm talking to myself now. Who can I bring in to help me think this through? Am I thinking it in the right way? And this is one great way, especially when it comes to data, when it's so complex. It's nice to have that thought partner next to you.
When you mention that, that's just using, like, you're talking about like your ChatGPT or your Gemini or your Claude, like you're literally asking it these questions to help just be that feedback partner.
Exactly. It can be any tool. Now you see these event tech tools that are now integrating a lot of things, like let me help you write a better title or things like that, which that's a whole nother conversation in terms of how, AI and data and how you use AI. But for the most part, just to get things started, as long as you're not putting any, what we call PII, the personal identification information, like email addresses, social security numbers, birth dates, those kind of things you don't want to put in. But definitely from the very basic starting point, it's like dating again. I love using the dating analogy. It's like, okay, we're going to go on a date. What kind of, where do we go? It's the same kind of concept, like, where do I want to go? Here are some goals. Where do I want to take this data?
Yeah, I mean, so where do you want to take the data, Vinnu? I mean, let me step back and say, I feel like mostly people are like, we got all this data, and then it either is paper and it's sitting on someone's desk, or it's all these rows on a spreadsheet and it's basically still sitting on someone's desk and nothing happens with it. So where do we start? Where is it mostly? And then like, where can we go with that?
Yeah, great question. And I think it goes all back to goals and strategies and KPIs. Start there. I mean, you may have collected data, you don't know what to do with it, but it's a lot, right? It's just a lot of stuff that's just kind of unorganized. So start off with what you're trying to accomplish. And like I said in the beginning, don't boil the ocean. This is exactly where I'm talking about. Like, don't try to solve all the problems. Start off with one. Start off with one goal, maybe not even a problem. Start off like, how many butts and seats you need to put. Those are vanity metrics. That's a whole nother conversation. But, like if your goal is just that, and you have a spreadsheet and you just need to figure out what are some major categories and demographics of these people based on title. But at least you've got a starting point, right? And that's where I know I find very difficult when I've got lots of little buckets of data in different sources, like figure out what is that strategy, what are the data points you need to support that strategy, and then start from that level.
In a planner, you've been on the product side, you're now running events internally. How has that shaped the way that you think about data and I guess also safety and privacy as well?
Well, I've always been someone that's been an advocate on the organization side, on the user side. Like this data that we're given, we are we are caretakers of that data, right? We're being entrusted with someone's email address, their preferences, their intent. They're coming to this event to get something out of us. And we definitely want to be able to get something from them in order to make that event better for them, right? But with that, we are their caretakers of their data. So privacy has been always number one and up front for me. When GDPR compliance first came out many, many years ago, I was like, yes, this is where we need to be. I'm actually waiting for the AI compliance to kind of become more standardized and more international as well, because I think we need that guidance and to give trust, right? To give trust back to our attendees that, we're not selling your data to the highest bidder. We're protecting it. I think that's important, but that's a security level piece of it. But definitely having been playing different roles of being an independent on staff and on the tech side, the one thing I have realized is that we all are at different levels when it comes to data. Some of us have some data, some of us have a lot of data. Some of us are really high tech with our data and know how to use it with tech. And some of us just are overwhelmed, and that's not our focus. We just need to pull reports. So I think it's been really eye-opening to kind of see people at different stages and meet them where they are. And I learned a lot of that through teaching the class through PCMA, which is around data analytics, and kind of seeing students from the whole range and being able to talk to them about, where they are at and where they need to be. I think one of the things is when you think about data, that overwhelming feeling, right, that you have to be like an expert at it in order to do it. You don't, right? And it excites me to have a conversation with someone who is just entering into this into the realm of data, into this world, and being able to say, you know what, this is your starting point, or meeting where people are, or having that conversation with someone that's really got a really sophisticated data system, but yet they haven't transitioned from having great insights to action, right? That's also a really very interesting part of the process as well.
I'm curious, Vinny, what your advice would be for a listener here who is maybe on that beginner side where they have their registration report that they've pulled of like who registered for the event. And maybe they even have a report of knowing who actually attended. Like, I just feel like a lot of people sit with that, as Lee said, just on their desk and not doing. Like, is there an action step or an example of someone who you've helped kind of coach them of how to use data to help inform their next event?
Sure. One example in the corporate realm, and I think you can use this in different realms, but looking at that registration list, especially when you're at like a trade show booth and collecting in all these leads, right? And people typically, a reg form is your first name, last name, title, right? Email address. Doesn't tell you a lot, right? But to be able to capture what they're interested in, whether it's topic area, or what they're responsible for, what they're, are they in a buying decision-making process, where they are at, are they going to buy something in 2 to 3 months? Anything that might be able to, that data that you can capture that helps you understand who they are, what do they want, right? So more than just a first name and last name. And again, it can be, if it's a booth, finding buyer's intent, or perhaps you're an association and you want to know what kind of content they want to get at the conference, or even this is one of my favorite ones, especially nowadays when people are saying virtual is dead. I'm not convinced of that. I don't think at all it's dead. I think it's maybe dead for some people who don't want to do virtual, but I think it's very much alive for those that want content that way. So in order to figure that out, the best way to do it is ask, right? Whether it's in a survey or in a registry, like, how do you want to consume information? And that's a data point, right? And then you can start like evaluating, oh, well, 90% of my in-person attendees want virtual content. Well, either that means you can turn your event virtual, or you add virtual content as part of your assets or content that you create.
So can I ask you though, when you're talking about getting data, I imagine there's the post event evaluation, bunch of data there. There's a registration form, bunch of data there. Are there other places that we're typically collecting data from? Like how do we get inside people's heads here in a good way,
Well,
in a benevolent way?
now this, I think, if you're not, if you beyond just the typical reg form, there are also all of these other platforms, right? When you're using event technology, depending on the platform you're using, you can figure out what content, what kind of, let's say it's an event platform and they're adding to their schedule what sessions they want to attend. Now, to them, they're creating an itinerary of all the sessions. But to you, what that shows you is what kind of sessions are they attending. So now you've kind of captured that category. You may have to do a little bit of homework, and this is where AI can help you in categorizing those sessions. But let's say it's crayon colors, right? Red, blue, and green. And you can start, if you categorize your sessions in those ways, then you can see, oh, well, this person likes red crayons only. And so maybe I should, invite them to our next event that deals with red crayons. Or, there's excitement about red events, but not necessarily the green events. So do we need to generate that content, or what's wrong with that content? So in so many different ways to dice it. But that's kind of one side of things. But there's also all of these online intelligence tools, right? Like Sixth Sense, Zoom Info. Now, are they 100% accurate? No. But basically, you've got these third-party tools that can tell you, you embed a widget onto your website, event website, or even to your own website. And it basically can say, Logan, you visited my website, and here are all the other things that you're looking at online that's relevant to that content or to your own website. I mean, it could get very complicated, but there are those business intelligence tools that are out there that can make your marketing, your event marketing, a little bit more savvier. So, when we talk about personalization, you're using those data points to really hone in on who your target audience is and what that message is.
I want to ask you more about personalization. Before I do, I want to admit a mistake we made as organizers. Was we were trying to get more data and information from our potential attendees. And so we had a very intricate survey that we sent to folks to get feedback of what they wanted to see our conference be. It was between year 1 and year 2. And we implemented a few of the things. It was very interesting to get this information. But then we were really frustrated was that the people who filled out that survey, like 5% of them actually came to the event. So it was like, oh, we got helpful information, but not really, because these people didn't choose to come. So we'd adjusted then, shortened our reg form to be like super short now for our conference. And then we send a follow-up email to anyone who registers that then gets their take as someone to be like, you've paid, you're coming. Now we want to hear what you're interested in. And I feel like it's a little controversial to have done that, because we had somebody else on the pod who was big on getting all that information in the first form. So I'd love your feedback or any reactions you have to that of our adjustments we've made, because I feel like we're not alone in trying to figure out how to get better data.
And you are so right. I think in the industry, you've got the two polars, right? You've got those that say, no, ask for the bare minimum. And those that are like, no, collect as much as you can, because when are you going to get it again, right? And I'm a bit of like in the middle, like figure out what's important to you. If, getting them in and out of that reg form is important, focus on that piece. You can probably get the other information by seeing what kind of sessions they're attending and, actually on site at the event. Because I also know that in reg form, sometimes we just kind of click boxes. I'm guilty of it. I click boxes just to get through it, right? But if that's the case, you want to look, reduce that reg form, have a plan of action to capture, what sessions they're going to. So whether it's, it can be as low tech as going into a session and, literally counting. I do this because it's the counter clicker, right? that we're used to. Go into the room, click the head count, you see how popular a session is or not. But, even that 5% that fills out that survey, it's still good, right? It's still 5% more than you had before. So I wouldn't discount it, but I would put it in perspective though. Because also people who fill out surveys tend to fill out, like those are have something to say, right? And it's usually not always that positive. But on the flip side, like I love having conversations with people on site and just having that anecdotal conversations and like mini focus groups in a way, but just hearing from the people.
Yeah, I think that often sometimes cuts through all the data when someone actually tells you, like, here's what's going on, and it's different than looking at a Likert scale or something. You're like, it's a 3.8 on satisfaction, but I don't know what to take from that. So yeah. So let's say I own an event. Well, no, let me go back to you. If you use this data, like how does the event change? I mean, like, do you personalize it for me going through it as an attendee? Is it a bigger superstructure thing of like, we just have fewer panels or something? I mean, is it all of the above? And what have you actually seen? What have you done? How has it worked?
I've done all of the above.
Yeah.
From taking, trying to figure out how to personalize even before AI, right? Trying to figure out how do we personalize information for attendees before they come to the event, like creating these journeys based on their interest levels. So collecting it at registration, saying, okay, great, you're interested in red crayons. I am going to create a customized agenda for you based on red crayons. And so having that piece. AI, there's a lot of AI tools right now that could also help with that journey, right? Whether from where you create the agenda based on the entire program that you have, you feed it in there and categorize and create this journey, or even have AI do it in real time, right? But there is that programming and that thought process that has to go into it. Yeah. So, and then, it could also be where it's personalization for marketing messages, right? To get people to there or retain those people that came from last year. You want them to come back again. Creating the message that doesn't make them feel like a first-time attendee, or maybe it is a first-time attendee, right? But it really runs the gamut. It's like I go back to pick the one thing, pick the one thing, that one strategy, that one point, and work with that piece instead of trying to do it all.
Yeah, I see myself. I'm like, I want to do more personalization for our conference because it's one of my few events a year. I have so much control on the process, but I was like, I want to use AI, but I've also witnessed how AI does it. And I'm like, it needs a human touch to kind of do the make the secret happen of actually making it feel personalized.
Yeah, I will tell you. So the first time I, was playing around with AI, I'm like, okay, I want to create this journey. Let's just see what AI is going to tell me. I didn't give it very much information. I put up the PDF of the program and it spit back junk. And of course it spit back junk, right? Because I didn't give it a framework. I didn't tell it what I wanted it to do. So I've slowly learned to create these frameworks before I tell AI what I want it to tell me. It's like love language of dating again, like work with me here a little bit. So I'll give one quick example if we have time. What I've done is I've gone through, taken a registration list, created personas, and like help me identify the top 3 personas of my attendees. Created those personas and said, what are the pain points? And I actually did this for the recent ASAE MMC conference as part of the committee. But what we did is, so we took the 3 personas, figured out what their biggest pain points were. And it's like, okay, I want to solve a problem. And so for each persona, so let's just say, but let's take for one persona. So here's their problem. Now tell me, out of all these sessions that are happening, what sessions can help me address that problem? And then it created those list of sessions. Now, did I have to review to make sure it was right? Absolutely. But that is just one way to kind of help AI tell me what I want to hear, right?
Maybe this is the same answer, but on maybe a more tactical side. If I am an event owner and I have data, I'm going to be collecting data. Where do I start? Like, what's the minimum viable, it's not even strategy, maybe like the minimum viable thing to do next?
In terms of like technically with the data, like just make sure it's in a spreadsheet at the very least.
Well, okay, let's say we've gotten to that. I say that's actually a good point, right? People may not have gotten to that point, but let's say we're at that point. Like, I've got the data, there it is, it's in the rows, checked it off, there it is. like, what do I do next? And I think that's where people, like, they don't take that first step, is my guess.
Sure. So once you figured out what your goal is, your strategy, you figure out what data points you need and want, and you're collecting it, right? That's kind of how I say it. You start collecting that data, and then you have the data. Is then to figure out, okay, so in order to, let's say I want to increase the number of first-time attendees. I got to figure out how many first-time attendees I had, how many people are in my universe that could be, and when I say universe, like in your whole list, mega list, even people that don't attend, how many have not attended? Because that's your net difference, right? And take a look at, just kind of those are the basic points of like figure out what you have, what you don't have, and then you can start creating these strategies of figuring out, okay, so I know that X number of people, they're from the West Coast. Maybe they're not coming because my event's on the East Coast, like start analyzing things that way. But again, it's like looking at that one goal, kind of have tunnel vision when it comes to the data in that when you first get started. But don't stop there. After you have all of those pieces, it's like create that action plan. What are you going to do with it afterwards?
I feel like I got a couple things hitting for me, Vinnu. I know I'm going to do that persona thing for my conference. We're going to do it because that is something that feels tangible and data driven, but not overwhelming. If I had to coach through it. I think before we wrap up our conversation here, I would love to have, because you live in this data world, is there anything like, what do you wish more event organizers or event planners did in anything that is related to data? Do you feel like you're having some conversations over and over again? If you could like make something happen, what would it be?
So action that data, like you've got it, figure out what you want to do with it and make something happen. Like, it's really easy in our world because we're overwhelmed with so much to do. And there's always something more creative, something more to do, someone else to make happy, right? But to take the time to say, okay, now I have these data points and it can help me improve something, help me achieve a goal. But actually make the plan too, right? Like harness that power and actually do it.
So good. We could talk to you for hours, I feel like, Vinnu, but I do want to give you opportunity. Is there anything else you'd like to add, and where can our listeners find you to stay in touch?
LinkedIn is the best place, and you'll find it under my full version. But if you type in Deshetty in LinkedIn, I'm sure you'll find me. But we'll be there. But this is exciting. I love nerding out with you all about this topic, and really hope that just keeping it simple empowers everyone to get started.
Yeah, just get in there and start working with your data. I know I'm guilty of it, just sitting on my laptop. So feeling inspired. Thank you so much, Vinnu.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I have our bonus tip this week. So Lee, this week's bonus tip is all about thinking about chair height and any part of your screens that might be what I would call a dead zone. Don't worry, listeners, this came from a very specific thing that happened to me a couple times this year. But just thinking about if you have a screen behind your stage and you're going to have people seated in chairs, when they sit down, they are probably going to block some of your screen. So thinking about that content-wise, if you have a really content-heavy slide, meaning lots of bullets, lots of things, they're going to get blocked by people sitting in the chairs, maybe the bottom third or 2/3. This is something, if you are overwhelmed, that your production or AV team should be able to help you with. But it's something just to visually think about where your slides are going to be, behind you, to the side of you, anything like that. And just make sure you're not going to be blocking your own content because you've probably worked pretty hard on those slides, whether you're the speaker or the organizer. So that's my bonus tip this week.
That's great. Although I feel like if you have tons and tons of content on that slide, maybe have less content on that slide, but you should still not have people covering up that content.
A bonus tip. There you go for you, Lee.
bonus tip. So now I think it is time to say goodbye. But as we do that, I'm going to let our listeners and maybe the rogue few viewers know where to find us. So you can follow the Better Events Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can email Logan and Mary, doesn't go to me, Logan and Mary at bettereventspod@gmail.com. It's the benefit of being a guest host here. I don't have to answer that email. And you can connect with us on LinkedIn directly as well. Just let us know that you heard about us from the podcast. And we love to hear from you, which is true. And if you want more Better Events content, join the paid private community on Substack. Thanks for listening, and we will be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.